Let's talk about, and we have a little bit of time left. I thought it was very interesting. You grew up the son of a comedian. What is that like, growing up with a comedian for a father? Does that make you funny or make you afraid of trying?
Well, I don't think it necessarily makes you funny. My father, like I think virtually every other comedian I've known personally, could be sad to depressive at home. He didn't give it away for free. As a matter of fact, my mother was the really funny one.
And she was an actress, right?
Yes.
And his name was Ernie
Simon,
and her name?
Patricia. Patricia Lyons, Lyons, her professional name. And so she was really the funny one in our family.
Because it was work for him.
Yes, and you know, he could be funny. He could turn it off and on. And
was he a stand-up comedian?
He was a stand-up comedian. He sat down. At one
but he worked
point,
clubs?
He worked clubs, yeah.
And how young were you when you first saw his act, outside of the house?
Outside of the house, I was probably about 3 or 4.
Do you remember?
Yes, sure, I remember.
What did you?
It was the Shapery nightclub in Chicago, and I remember it specifically because I mean I thought every kid grew up this way, of course, and I was brought back to the kitchen, and you know, one thing I remember is, of course, I could tell even at that age, improbably beautiful women who were chorus dancers would kiss me on the top of my little soft brown head, which I thought was just great. And then I could have anything I wanted. And of course, what I wanted turned out to be like a huge scoop of vanilla ice cream with hot chocolate sauce all over it in this nice silver tureen. And what I remember of my father's act is secondary to what I remember
about the fun in the kitchen.
But I used to ask other kids something like, you know, what's your father's act? Because I thought every kid's father, if he, you know, it wasn't a comedian.
They all went off and worked in nightclubs with chorus girls.
They had to be a singer, or they had to be a dancer, they had to be a ventriloquist or something like that, or a drummer. Good friend of growing up, Bunky Cook. Do we ever know people with names like that when we're, you know, over 8 years old? But Bunky Cook's father was a drummer.
Well, so you and Bunky bonded, if you'll pardon my taking that too far.
Yeah.
But then, as you got older and understood what he died when you were 16?
16. Yeah.
So you really didn't get to have all those years, but you had enough to understand what it was he was doing. That person he had to become on stage was not the person he necessarily was.
Yes, and you know, although as I grew to think of it, I think the person he was on stage was some kind of extension of who he was. It was sometimes who he wanted to be in his best moments. It was when
Isn't that when work is its sweetest?
Yeah,
you know, when you can become, because I'm thinking of something you said that of all the things I read about you, just jumped out at me as a really provocative and interesting statement. You talked about when you stopped being a reporter and became a human being.
Oh boy!
And I think you keyed this to your daughters when you adopted your daughters. What's the difference?
Well, you know, there are a million differences, but I hope I've never been one of those reporters who thinks that the overriding ethic is necessarily just to get a good story. I think there are other things that we have to worry about, should worry about in our lives. Well, and God bless them. I'm just not there, and I suspect won't be. Sorry.
But fatherhood took you into another dimension.
Fatherhood took me into another dimension. You know, and fatherhood, and I mean, I think part of it, although it's a novel, is also expressed in Windy City. I mean, I'm talking in there about characters, people who I covered as a journalist, who it's easy to mock and easy to ridicule. But I don't want to spend 2 years of my life mocking and ridiculing people when I'm working on a novel. And I guess I am just less inclined to look for the aspect of a story that'll blow things up or blow someone up.
You got wonderful reviews. That must make you very. I mean, the Post gave you a big wet kiss.
Yeah, yes, it did, and that was wonderful to receive. That big wet kiss, it really was.
And are sales going well?
Sales are going very well. Knock wood. We've been on the New York Times bestseller list, and
that's a nice place to be.
Yes, and I'm told that, you know, for a book that's not authored by Deepak Chopra, to have a so-called literary novel, that's very good.
Now you say that your contract's coming up.
Yeah.
Is this a juncture for you? I mean, are you happy in your work? Is it something you want to continue doing?
Yes, I am happy in my work. I am happy in my work. But you know, as I sometimes have to remind people, it's not. You know, it's a two-way street. NPR at one point might be unhappy with me, or at least decide that they want to make a change under any circumstance.
Do you see a life in which you could do both? Continue writing and continuing it for a while?
Well, that's the life I'm leading now, so yeah.
But your daughters are very, well, yes, but I mean, it's whether you see it in the long term.
I like broadcasting a lot. I like our show a lot.
And you can't imagine
And
not
I think
doing
it puts me, yeah, I think it puts me in touch with so many things in life that make our lives richer and more rewarding. And, you know, I don't, during 9/11, I mean, there's one thing that my wife and I talked about. I don't know how to react to some overwhelming event in our lives without being a journalist.
Without getting on the air.
Yeah, like I anchored our
what you
overnight
do.
special coverage. I don't know how, you know, if I sold shoes, I don't know what I would have done through a period like that. So,
but your daughters were born in China.
yes.
And they're young. Have you thought of going back or going over and living there for a while with them?
In China, I can't say we've thought about living in China. No, we sometimes talk about maybe, because my wife is
Just
French.
living in France.
Yeah, or Western Europe, Great Britain or something like that. But no, I can't say we've talked about, no. We just got our kids out of there.
Well, no.
Yeah,
I think
no.
the existence you would give them would be different than the existence.
I suppose so, and I want them to understand that they come from a great culture and
Take them back to
certainly
Chicago.
Well,
I think
you see, but that's important to me
You've got-
too. That that they know the part of them that's Chinese, and they know the part of them that's French because they're growing up speaking French. But yes, it's important for me that they also know that
the part
at
that
some
goes to
level-
Cub games
Yeah.
all summer long.
Although Elise is a White Sox fan.
A White Sox fan, but at least it's the right city.
Yes, of course. Does that? I wish.
Everybody, we've got Scott's wonderful book here, Windy City, and you can buy it and get it signed out front. We're gonna run around to the front and do a little selling and signing. And thank you so much.
My
Should we
pleasure.
start talking about the next one now, because you're already writing the next
Already
book,
writing the next one.
and we'll start
I
planning
will.
the
I
next
would
Q&A.
love to be here if it's all right with
Well,
you.
we'd love to
please.
have you back. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. I hope we see you next week. Thank you.